Welcome back and watching Business Morning on Channels Television. Eric Egging, he's the chairman, one of the chairmen of the World Pension Summit, and CEO Egging van Manen Communications Consultancy joins me now on the program. Quite a mouthful there, but good morning to you, Eric, and thank you so much for joining me on the program. So, speaking with Harry, who's also, one of the chairmen as well, I get the feeling that there's this challenge of education and communication with regards pensioners understanding what exactly they need to be doing.
Exactly. Well, not only pensioners, it's also the amount of time before you are being pensioned. You have to know what kind of financial challenges you have in the last part of your life. Because if you don't start saving in time, and when you're too late, you have too little money in the pension pot, and that's as simple as that. So I think financial literacy and starting to educate people about their financial whereabouts and future should start at elementary school. And then people have to realize how to cope with that. It's self-management.
So talking about self-management, it's not too late to start it at this time, but whose responsibility should it be? Should it be the pension fund administrator's responsibility, or should it be the regulator's responsibility, in this case, PenCom?
I think both. They both have a responsibility to start with these educational programs and to stimulate these educational programs as soon as possible, because they both benefit from it. If people are realizing that they have to do something in their own financial administration and own financial organization personally at home, well, they have to know what they have to do and what investments are and how risks can be managed, even on a small scale.
But then do you get this impression that some individuals take it for granted that, I work in a system that's supposed to cater for me when I do retire at a certain age, so I don't necessarily have to, go and begin to find out who my pension fund administrator is at the moment, because it's supposed to be a normal thing to happen.
Yeah, well, that's a worldwide problem. It's not only Africa, it's Europe, it's the United States, it's everywhere. Everywhere we meet the same challenges and the same dilemmas about how people start to react thinking about their financial future for the last quarter of their lives. And well, the experience is most people start thinking about that too late, and they've saved too little. And well, by the end, when they're 65 or 68 or whatever age they want to retire, they realize that they have not enough money. And what all of us should try to prevent is the old age poverty, because that's something you really wouldn't like to match.
So we're talking about the fact that there's not enough education, not enough communication as well. So in talking about flexible plans, Harry actually mentioned it, that PFA should begin to focus on having more flexible plans that will cater for the cater of age that you just mentioned. Could you, give me your thoughts on it?
Well, that's a good idea, not only a good idea, but also a good practice, because if you have flexible plans and people see what they save themselves because they have the account like they have in Nigeria, they are more integrated and they think along what their financial future looks like, because they know what the amount of money they have. But there was an experiment recently, I think it was in the United States, that people were asked the questions, okay, let's say you have a $100,000 pot. People said, well, then I'm rich. But you're not if you have to live on it for 30 years. It's too small, it's too little. And the amount of money, finally, when you say $100,000, for 30 years or 20 years, it's not much money to live on, especially when you live in the United States. So the perception of how much money you need is also something you have to be aware of.
But then, still relating it back here to African countries, particularly Nigeria, we're not immune to what's going on in a global perspective, especially with a cyclical downturn, if you'd like to put it that way, in global commodity prices, particularly oil. And so there's been a lot of talk about leveraging on pension funds, especially in infrastructure and real estate development. But from conversations now, it looks like not a lot of people even understand what how much money they have and how much they should be ensuring that it's actually saved up. But talking about leveraging on those funds, do you think it would be easy actually to expand investment frontiers, for instance, for pension funds, especially for individuals who start saving too late?
Yeah, well, I call it the prisoner's dilemma, because on one end you would like to have a very good investment which gives a high yield and a lot of money by the end of the saving time, but on the other hand you have to spread out your risks. If you only invest for, let's say, 20% into real estate, for example, maybe that's not a good idea, because you never know what the prices of real estate are going to do. So spreading risks is a very important thing. So if I know that economies also in Europe but also in Africa are really tempted to look at infrastructural projects, and especially regional or local infrastructure project, because if you invest in roads or in airfields or in bridges, whatever, it also gives the economy a boost. So for the macroeconomic perspective it's good, but for the personal perspective of the person who saved that money, I mean, you can't sell the road when you're finished, when you're 65, and you want to have some money out of that road. So it's a prisoner's dilemma. For the country, it's good. For the personal savings, I don't know. You have to spread out your risks.
So what about investing in the domestic market? Yeah. Because right now recession is ongoing on expanding investment frontiers for pension funds, and we've got the CEO of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, exactly, one of the panelists, and that's going to be the focus. There's been a lot of talk about investing in the capital market, equities, bonds, treasury bills, for instance. Yeah. Why is it that we've not seen so many PFAs, going that route?
Yeah, well, I think that investment policy is something which should be really carefully be done, because we've all seen the economic downturn in the last 8 to 10 years. We've seen the American market going down. We now see the Chinese market going down. So it's not an easy task to pinpoint what strategy is the best strategy. I'm not an investor myself, but I can imagine that I talk to a lot of investors. They all have their own routes, and they all know the best way to invest and the best efforts they make. And I'm sure that one of the dilemmas, of course, is do we keep the pension investments in our local economy, or do we go beyond the frontiers? I think doing so is a very good thing, because that's also a way to spread out your risks, not only investing in Nigeria or in Africa, but also go beyond those frontiers to make the risk for the beneficiaries in the end as small as possible.
So the summit ends today. What will be your take-home points? Because definitely there have to be some action points for you to begin to work towards the next annual summit, which will come up next year.
Exactly. Well, I think that if we look at the African continent, we, as Harry said, we have a lot to do to get contributions from other African countries, because we really need that. It's not Nigeria, it's not Kenya, it's not South Africa, which are the main countries involved, Tanzania, but also the other countries from Africa, because I think you have such a huge challenge to go, because Africa is booming. Africa is really having the opportunities, and you should do that together. And I think we can play a very small but maybe vital role in exchanging the knowledge of different African countries and strategies.
So, in talking about those strategies, could you just maybe talk about a couple of them?
The strategies for African countries.
Yes.
Well, I think that there should be. If you talk about, let's say, pension administration, for example, what we have the learnings from other areas, other continents, that pension administration is often a costly thing. And I think the advantage of Africa is that they can learn what they shouldn't be doing from the old systems. So the lessons from other parts of the world could be taken into Africa and say, well, we've seen that, but we don't want that. We want the new technologies. We want the high-end technology from the internet, for example, which are very, very easy to manage from Africa, because you don't have the old technology. You start with a new chapter yourself. So that's something you can learn of. And I think the strategy should be, what can we learn from other countries outside Africa, and learn from it and say, this is not what we want it better, so we bring it in ourselves. And you have the creativity, you have the cash, and you have the commodities as well. That's what Gerald said.
Yes, that's what Gerald said yesterday, and actually I was going to bring that up. So the 3 C's are very critical at this time. We have the creativity, we've got the commodities, and we've got the cash.
The cash.
We'd like to put it that way, even though it seems to be a little tight at the moment. But the commodities, with the fluctuating oil prices that we see, how well do you think this will play out for us?
Oh, in the end, it's in every crisis, you see that people are watching the day prices of oil, the day prices of cocoa, the prices of whatever you have. For a pension perspective, you look at an investment for 20 to 30 years. So the day-to-day volatility is relatively interesting. So look at it from a broad perspective, long-term investment, and I think energy is a very important asset class itself.
So just to take you back a little bit, let's focus more on the reforms, because that's one of the focus that for the conversation yesterday. Do you think we have adequate reforms in the pension industry?
Well, if you talk about reforms, I think the most important is, and Harry pointed it out itself, trust is a very basic thing, but it's a very good thing, because if you design pension funds and pension administratives, you need to know that by the end, the end user has trust in what you do, and every reform should have that in mind. So I think that transparency is very, very important in that respect.
Well, thank you so much, Eric, for coming on the program and giving us those thoughts. Of course, we're going to have you back here again next year.
Good.
When we have another World Pension Summit.
Looking forward to it.
Definitely. Well, Eric Egging is the CEO, Egging Van Manen Communications Consultancy, and is also one of the chairman of the World Pension Summit. They're giving us his thoughts on proceedings on the first day at the summit here in the nation's capital, Abuja, and what to expect in the coming days. Of course, it's been a sharing of ideas and perspectives by industry players, and both domestic and international, of course, with regards how best the pensions administration systems can work. We've got another perspective to this. We'll be right back after this break.